Hello, everyone, and welcome to Module 5. This week, we're going to talk about how to gather information and how to tell the difference between different sources that you gather to make sure that they're ones that are accurate and credible for your audiences. Now, by now, of course, you've done all your reading and you know a lot about the different places to gather the information. But one of the challenges, especially in this day and age, is when you're looking at a website, when you're looking at something on social media that a friend posts, how do you know whether that information is accurate and something to be believed, or maybe something that you have to be more careful of? So I want to introduce to you an acronym that'll help you as you're gathering information decide whether those sources are something that you can use or should consider as part of your references. I'm going to start with the story which happened in, I think it was in July of 2015, and as you'll see, and I'll just read on the top. It says, on March 11, 2011, there was a large nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Japan. And this image was posted on Imgur, a photo sharing website, in July of 2015. As you'll see, it says Fukushima nuclear flowers, and then it says not much more to say. This is what happens when flowers get nuclear birth defects. Now, if you look at the bottom, it says, does this post provide strong evidence about the conditions near the Fukushima Daiichi power plant? Now, at first you think, well, okay, yes, because there was actually a large nuclear disaster at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Japan. So it's certainly possible, and these flowers do look a little strange. So why would you not believe it? The challenge is that if you look into it a little more, there's no way to tell that this is actually a picture taken at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. And if you look online and you try to find out more about these flowers, you will actually end up finding that these flowers are naturally occurring mutations that may have happened at the nuclear power plant, but don't necessarily. There are examples of them in Iowa and in many other places around the world. So this is just an example of why it's so important to make sure that when you're looking at information, you have a way to decide whether or not it's credible and how to figure that out. So let's look at an acronym that I think is pretty easy to remember that will help you do that. And the acronym that I use to evaluate sources is CRAP. And each one of those, the C, R, A, and P, are different pieces that when you're looking at a website, you can use to figure that out. So let's look at the first one. The C stands for currency. And I don't mean currency as in the money. I mean currency as in how current is it. So how recent is the information? How recently has the website been updated? And is it current enough for your topic? So how recent is the information? Especially if you're doing something that's current news, you want to make sure that what you're talking about is still valid in the time that you're talking about it, and that information hasn't been updated since then. Of course, if you're talking about it that was something that happened a long time ago, then you have to worry about that first one a little bit less. How recently has the website been updated? Oftentimes you'll find this at the very bottom of a website, and if it's 2021 and you see at the bottom that it was last updated in 2015, then what does that tell you? It tells you that whoever owns that website hasn't really taken the time to update it. It's probably a dead or just languishing website and maybe not something that you should consider a possibly good source. And then lastly, is it current enough for your topic? Again, especially if you're taking something that's current event, do you have information that is relevant? For example, as a silly example, if you were to do something on the different planets and you find a website that talks about planets that was from a long time ago, then maybe they talk about Pluto as being a planet, but as we all know now, Pluto has been decided that it's not a planet, it's actually a dwarf planet. So if you used an older website, you would actually not have the correct and current information for your topic. So that's the currency. The first thing you want to look at is in terms of timing and the relevance of the information. The other thing you want to think about is reliability. That's what the R in CRAP stands for. So what kind of information is included in the resource? Is the content of the resource primarily opinion? Is it balanced? And does the creator provide references or sources for data or quotations? So what kind of information is included in the resource is the information that you can believe. If you look at that picture, for example, that we looked at earlier, the flowers, you don't actually see anything that's related to the power plant. So how can you believe that that's actually from a power plant? The other question is the content primarily opinion? If it's opinion, then you can't say that it's a fact, right? It's somebody believing something. Is it balanced? So if somebody's talking about an opinion, do they show the different points of view? This is especially important if you're looking at news articles, making sure that it's a news article that is sharing the different pieces of information. And lastly, does the creator provide references or sources for data or quotation? I find this super important, again, especially if I'm reading news articles. If somebody says a study showed that X happened, I want to know that there's an actual link to show me what that study shows. Now, I'm not expecting you to actually read the entire study, but to understand that the person that's using that data or quotations or information actually has relevant and reliable information to be able to say what it is that they're saying. So that's the R. The other one is authority. Authority in terms of who is the creator author, what are their credentials, who publishes or sponsor that particular website, are they reputable, what is the interest of the publisher in the information, and then one that's super important to me is, are there advertisements on the website? So first of all, who's the creator author? Oftentimes if I find a website, or even on a well-known website, I see a particular article, I will go and I'll just Google who the author is and find out who he or she is. And then say, okay, is this somebody who has authority about this particular subject so that I can believe and use that as a source? What are the credentials? If I'm looking at an article on planets and I read something by Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's one of the foremost astronomers in the world, well, then their credentials and who they are obviously tells me that they're a good source of that information. But if I'm using someone that I don't know who it is and I've never heard of them, then maybe that's not quite such a credible source. Who is the publisher or sponsor of the website, and are they reputable? And what is the interest? This all goes to the sense of what is the interest of the person who's publishing that website. One of the things I always find this interesting is in magazines, where oftentimes if they say something like, here are the top 10 products of 2019, what people don't always realize is that somebody is paying to have those 10 products published. And so it's not always reliable information because somebody has a vested interest in those particular products being the ones that are at the top of the list. And lastly, are there advertisements on the website? This doesn't necessarily mean if there's an advertisement that it is not a credible source. But if they do have advertisements, some things I look at are, what kind of advertisements are they? What are they for? Are they for something that's a little strange, or is it something that makes sense? And if they have advertisements at all, then I have to wonder that somebody is actually paying them to advertise on that website, and it might skew a little bit of how they portray certain information on that website. So that's the A. And the last one is purpose or point of view. Is this fact or opinion? Is it biased? And is the creator author trying to sell you something? This goes to the idea of whether this is something that is just shown as fact, or if somebody has a vested interest in trying to get you to believe something. And that's super important to understand. If they're trying to sell you something, then obviously it's not that it's not necessarily a good source, but you recognize that they have a particular point of view that they're trying to push, and that maybe that point of view isn't necessarily a fact, but more their opinion, and that they're biased. So those are the 4 things I want you to think about the next time that you're looking at a website to choose for some of your information. The acronym is CRAP: currency, reliability, authority, and purpose and point of view.